Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio, 7 o'clock here in the morning, Monday morning, June the 27th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room's open, and I did pop the link into there to what we're looking at from Robert Burney's webpages, Joy to Me and You, and that's a lot of good information there. I hope everybody will check it out. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows, and I just wanted to be one more voice speaking out against abuse and standing up, and making some noise about child abuse, and also another voice for survivors. I've been going back and listening to some of my original, first episodes, and that was really the goal, was just to be another voice out here, because I had seen that there were quite a few voices out here, and I thought, man, I just want to add my voice to everybody else's, and then I'm on my healing journey, so I thought, well, I'll just, share information with people that I find helpful. So that's why I'm doing these shows. So you have to listen at your own discretion. And topics of abuse, they can be pretty sensitive, and I think, a lot of people make a lot of people uncomfortable. So you have to know what's good for you to listen to. And if you think the topics of abuse might bother you, then you need to turn the show off. And, ultimately it is your discretion to listen, so you, make the right choice for yourself. And, listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows, because I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows. And so, if you're under the age of 18, have an adult, like somebody who's older than you, who's an adult who can help you make a decision for whether you should be listening age appropriately, right? And keep yourself safe online. That's a huge thing. Online safety is very, very important. And the FBI and ICAC, and there's a whole lot of people, a lot of organizations, government organizations working on trying to keep children safe online. So if you're under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show. Hopefully you have an adult who cares about you. That sometimes doesn't happen. Sometimes we don't have a parent or caregiver who actually cares what we're doing. But, I would ask that you would find somebody like a coach, a mentor, a teacher, a school counselor, somebody who could listen to my show with you to make sure that it is something appropriate for you to be listening to. And because it's really not for young children. Like, my show has a lot of adult material and mature content on it. And it is ultimately about stopping child abuse and about child abuse, but yet, there's a lot of adult content on it. So I would just ask that you get permission to listen to my show, have somebody listen to it with you, and then they can help you make the right choice for yourself, too. So thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. Good morning. And, we're going to get right into this. This is Robert Burney's webpages, and that's from www.joy to me and you, MEU, joy, the number 2, MEU.com. And we left off on Friday talking about positive affirmations. He's got at least two pages, based talking about positive affirmations. We went over the first one, and now this is the second page that I want to look at. It says more on positive affirmations, taking loving action for ourselves. And so I'm just going to read through here and add all my own stuff, as you know. I'm just talking about my own healing journey and stuff. And so that's what we're going to pick up. And he says Robert Burney, he's a codependence therapist. He's also a grief counselor. He's a spiritual teacher. He's an author. He's written a book called Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. And he's got a lot of great material here. I hope everybody will check it out. If you go to his webpage, www.joy, the number 2, MEU.com, and go to the site index, you can see all the stuff that he's got there, all kinds of great information for people. We probably won't cover it all, but I just wanted to touch on a few things, mainly dealing with codependency and codependence, and also inner child healing and whatnot. But there's a lot more there. There's just tons. And it's a great resource. I hope everybody will check it out. So he says, Robert Burney says, we need to own that we have the power to choose where to focus our mind, and we can consciously start viewing ourselves from the witness perspective. It is time to fire the judge, our critical parent, and choose to replace that judge with our higher self, who is a loving parent. And we can then intervene in our own process to protect ourselves from the perpetrator within, the critical parent disease voice. And he said this is something that he kind of has throughout his writings here. He says, the part of you that tells you that you are not lovable, that you are not worthy, that you are not deserving is the disease. It is trying to maintain control because that is all that it knows how to do. And it says, we are not better than, we are also not less than. And the messages that we are better than came from the same place the messages of less than come from, the disease. So He says, there is nothing wrong with me or you. It is our relationship with ourselves and life that is dysfunctional. And he says, we are spiritual beings who came into a body in an emotionally dishonest, spiritually hostile environment where everyone was trying to do a human according to false belief systems. So we were taught to expect life to be something that it isn't. It isn't our fault that things are so screwed up, he says. It is, however, our responsibility to change the things we can within ourselves. And, changing our belief systems, our attitudes, towards life and towards ourselves. It says we need to turn down the volume on those loud, yammering voices that shame and judge us and turn up the volume on the quiet, loving voice. As long as we are judging and shaming ourselves, we are feeding back into the disease. We are feeding the dragon within that is eating the life out of us. So this is all excerpts from his book and quotes from his book, Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. And he has quite a lot of that throughout the site, so you can check it out. It looks like a great book, and I would like to get a hold of it. When I get some extra money, I'm going to grab a copy of this book for sure. And also John Bradshaw. He's got a great book, Healing the Shame That Binds You. John Bradshaw has done a lot of great work on codependence and toxic shame and all that. So that's another book that I want to get a hold of for sure. But he says here, I'm going to make a brief point about two dimensions of this phenomena in relationship to empowerment. And these two dimensions are the horizontal and the vertical. In this context, the horizontal is about being human and relating to other humans in our environment. The vertical, is spiritual, about our relationship to the God force. And codependence is at its core a spiritual disease, and the only way out of it is through a spiritual cure. So any recovery, any empowerment depends upon spiritual awakening. That's quite interesting what he has to say there. He's very spiritual, as you can tell. John Bradshaw looks at it a little differently. He's not quite so spiritual. Maybe he is in his own right, but in his writings, in his book for the work that he did on healing the shame that binds you, John Bradshaw, he wasn't so spiritual. I mean, Robert Burney really gets really deep, and he really takes a look at the whole spiritual side of things. So it's quite interesting to see. We may not agree with all of it, you know what I mean? I don't agree with every single thing I read, and I don't, some of it doesn't apply, and some of it I just don't agree with, but it's not, it's good to take a look at what he has to say. Some of it I totally agree with, right? Some of it makes sense to me, and some of it may not make sense to all of us, but, it is kind of good to check it out. He says, integrating the spiritual truth, the vertical, of an unconditionally loving God force into our process is vital in order to take the crippling toxic shame about being imperfect humans out of the equation. That toxic shame is what makes it so hard for us to own our own right or own our right to make choices instead of just reacting to someone else's set of rules. And he says we need to own that we have the power to choose where to focus our mind, and we can consciously start viewing ourselves from the witness perspective. So this is where he says it's time to fire the judge, our critical parent, choose to replace that judge with our higher self, who is a loving parent. So he repeats himself there, but he says more on positive affirmations, taking loving action for self. The Spirit speaks from love, not shame. And the small, quiet, loving voice of intuition is telling us the truth. And we learn to negatively affirm ourselves several hundred times a day. It is very important to start taping over the old tapes with positive affirmations. And so positive affirmations are really important. I used to think it was kind of silly myself. When I heard about people doing positive affirmations, I was thinking, oh, okay. I don't know if I want to get involved in that, sitting there talking to myself and telling myself that I love myself. But actually it's worked because what I did, I actually believed it. And I thought, yeah, I do love myself. And it took me a while to actually, let that sink down inside and say, no, I do love myself. I do deserve to have a good life. I was not put here just to be abused and suffer, and I'm a good person, and, things like this. And I started to really understand that actually that was the truth. Yeah, and that I wasn't all these things that my parents had told me I was, and that society tells me I am, and that, my family would tell me that I was, a loser and a bad person and all this stuff that I'd carried with me for so long. And so I sort of turned it around by not listening to that critical parent voice and that critical voices, and I turned it around and started listening to my own inner voice, my voice that was comforting me and saying, no, I love myself. I'm a good person. I don't deserve to be treated badly by anybody, and I deserve to have a good life, and I didn't deserve what happened to me as a child. I certainly didn't ask for it. And, that really did help because I started to actually realize that it was the truth. So it's not that I just believed it. It's just that I realized it was the truth, So now I don't listen to that critical parent voice very much, you know what I mean? I just tune it out. So he says the disease, the dark side of the force, learns to try to control feelings and behavior with fear, guilt, and shame. And then he goes on to say the programming of the disease was negative, to react to life from fear, lack, and scarcity. It is trying to protect us by keeping us from trusting. It believes separation is what is safe. So, it's pretty sad, but most people I know, a lot of people react to life from fear-based beliefs, fear-based ideas, fear-driven stuff, and that's horrible. It's a horrible way to live. Lack, just not having enough, just lacking in every area, and scarcity, same thing, And it's not, a lot of it is just poverty-minded, you know what I mean? Fear and nothing's ever going to be enough, and nothing will ever be right, and nothing will, and this whole idea that life is not, that I'm not enough, or that life is just not good enough, and that's just really, I think that just comes from fear of not having enough, and fear of from what people and what society tells us who we are, that we aren't good enough, we don't measure up. And that's sad. It says to the disease, this is a functional cycle. Shame begets the self-abuse, which begets the shame, which serves the purpose of the disease, which is to keep us separate so we don't set ourselves up to fail by believing that we are worthy and lovable. So that's a lot of it, This is from a column that he wrote, A Dance of Suffering, Shame, and Self-Abuse by Robert Burney. And he says, that's quite interesting. The disease is the functional cycle. The shame begets the self-abuse, which begets the shame, which serves the purpose of the disease, which is to keep us separate so that we don't set ourselves up to fail by believing that we are worthy and lovable. And I mean, so many people, I've heard people say this before, oh, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve anything good. I've heard people literally say that. And I'll be like, that's not right, because that something inside of me has always said that that's not true. You know what I mean? That statement that anybody could make, it wouldn't matter who said it, even myself or anybody else, is not true. We all deserve to be loved. We all are worthy, and we all deserve to have a good life and to be treated well with decency and respect and dignity. And for people to go around beating themselves up all the time and saying, no, I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of. But some of it's on a subconscious level. I think many times it is on a subconscious level, and that's why we self-sabotage. And I know for myself, self-sabotaging, I didn't even realize I was doing a lot of self-sabotaging because, it wasn't necessarily self-injuring. We're just talking about self-sabotaging, like sabotaging relationships, sabotaging jobs, sabotaging just about anything that could come along just because we're afraid of failure. And I know that for myself that was a big issue. I was already thinking, okay, I don't measure up anyway, and so before these people or anybody has a chance to hurt me, I'm gonna put a stop to it. So I would get out of relationships, because it was all based out of fear-driven stuff and fear-based stuff. And so I think that a lot of times people do that as a matter of protection so that they don't set themselves up to fail, to think, to fail again. And then all of a sudden to be down again and say, look, see, this is all that I ever get. This is all that ever happens. And I know for myself in relationships, that's how I was, especially with, thinking of a partner in a relationship type thing. Because I grew up the way that I did and saw my parents fighting all the time and was witnessing a lot of abuse and domestic violence, and seeing their relationship really put a damper on what I thought relationships were all about. And even though I had seen a few people that had some great relationships, I'd also seen some other people outside of my family, or even within my family, some of my siblings and their relationships with their partners and husbands, and and then people around me, relationships. Being in this intimate relationship with somebody just didn't seem like a good idea to me, because I figured somebody's going to get hurt and it will probably be me. So what I developed an attitude when I was young that I would be the one to do that, that I would be the one to hurt that person, so that, to make sure I didn't get hurt. And then when I got older, of course, I realized I didn't want to be the one to do that. I didn't want to hurt people. So what I would do is just break off any type of relationship. Anytime anybody got close, I wouldn't allow it, you know what I mean? And that's even stemming from being in my early 20s, and I finally allowed myself to be in one relationship, but we broke off within a couple of years, even after talking marriage, And it was a good thing because we would have killed each other. We were both not doing well, and he was abused as a child, and neither one of us had done any healing work or tried to get any help, and we would have just killed each other. We would have been our parents all over again. But there were other situations where people would ask me out, and I immediately would close up. I wouldn't let anybody get close, and so it was just protection, a self-protection measure. And I think a lot of times we do that, and that's a form of self-sabotage. It's sabotaging relationships before they even happen, and that way we can guarantee we're not going to get hurt. It's a sad way to live. It's an extremely sad way to live. I know I did that with my sweetheart, who I'm still with. We've been together 16 years. And the first year we were together was iffy, and because I didn't trust anybody, and as much as I really cared for him, I wasn't sure if I loved him, and I wasn't sure if I could allow myself to have this relationship. And so many things happened during that year that caused me to believe that I trust him. Of course, I didn't trust anybody, so it really wasn't necessarily all his fault. I just didn't trust anybody, and I ended up leaving him. And it was the safest thing I could think of doing was to get out of Dodge. And so I packed up and I moved out within 2 hours. I was gone out of his life, and we split up for a year, and then we got back together because he was waiting for me. He says, "I'm waiting for you to call me." He truly loved me, and we're together still today. And so, that was just one more thing I was doing to self-sabotage. And that's that whole idea of, really, am I worthy? Is someone going to love me enough to be careful not to hurt me? Am I worthy of this love, of this care? And a lot of people, go through their lives not believing that they are worthy, of love and capable of being loved, and capable of loving, capable of having a good life and allowing themselves to have a good life, and whatever is good, that they want to do. And it's sad, but this is the truth of it. It's absolutely horrible. He says we need to stop giving power to the monster within. He says we need to turn down the volume on those loud, yammering voices that shame and judge us, and turn up the volume on the quiet, living voice. As long as we are judging and shaming ourselves, we are feeding back into the disease. We are feeding the dragon within that is eating the life out of us. And it's quite interesting. I was thinking about this actually yesterday and the day before, on the weekend there, was that the reason I think, when I look back at my childhood and I think about the fact that we weren't allowed to have any feelings on what was happening in the home. None of us were allowed to express our feelings about the dysfunction between my parents and their relationship, just the dysfunction between my dad and his relationship with my brothers, and the abuse and the garbage that was going on. It was absolutely ridiculous, and we weren't allowed to have any feelings on it or feel anything at all towards it, because my mother didn't want anybody to open their mouth and speak out against what was happening in the home, and she was the one controlling that. And so, because they were both brought up on charges, and I think she was just at the point where she was really out of her mind. I mean, she was driven crazy by my dad, really, is what happened. But and her own crazy mother. So I thought about it, and I thought, that's why I guess a lot of times survivors of abuse, especially children who are abused for so long and there's really no help, and they go through life and then they finally become adults, and then finally do tell somebody. The shame and the guilt of even telling somebody is enough to stop somebody from telling somebody, because my family, I have one sister and one brother who's still living, which, out of a huge family, and my dad is still here. He's 88 years old. But that's it in the immediate family. And they, I guess what it is my view of myself, because of what I've done, which has gone public with my story. My little inner child is still thinking that, I'm in trouble because I've gone and opened up my mouth, And so all of a sudden I can hear this critical inner parent voice saying to me, shame on you, how could you do this? You're just a loser, you're worthless, you deserved every bit of that abuse, and when I think about, go back, because I wrote, very specifically wrote down a lot of the abuse that had taken place and wanted to present a truthful picture of what happened in my family. So A Life of Death and Redemption is very truthful. It's very 100% truthful and 100% honest. Detailed the abuse and stuff. And I thought, as I did that, it did free me because it allowed my voice to be heard for the first time, really publicly. I mean, I had talked to people over the years about what had happened to me, and a lot of my friends knew. So we used to talk, especially when I was a teenager. A lot of my teenage friends knew how I was growing up and knew the situation, and there was lots of people that knew my parents and knew the situation in the home that would talk to me. So it's not like I had never talked to anybody about it. And as an adult, I used to talk to a few people who would tell me their stuff, and then I would tell them mine, and sort of just share some of our past tragedies and stuff, and people that I trusted, that I was close enough to. So it's not like I never told anybody. It's just the fact that when I finally went public, and my family knows what I'm doing. My sister, my brother, my dad all know that I wrote the book and what I'm doing. Nobody's come forward to say, oh, we don't like what you're doing. So they've all said it behind my back. They won't come over and tell me to my face that they don't like what I'm doing, but I think that's probably because they probably think they'd kill me if they did. So they're all staying pretty clear of me. But the thing is that little child within me is now sort of hiding in the corner, right? Because she's thinking, oh my God, I'm bad. Look what I did. I narked on my parents. I narked about what happened to me, and I narked about what they did to me. And part of me is feeling like maybe that's that whole disease of not being free to tell what happened to us. That is horrific. That is absolutely wrong. It's incredibly wrong. We have the right to speak up about what happened to us. I have the right to say that my parents hurt me. I have the right to say that my sibling hurt me. You know what I mean? Like, that is my right. That is my power. That's my voice, and I have every right to speak out. But society and the law and other people and the abusers always try to stuff that out. Well, of course they do, because they don't want to get in trouble. The abusers don't want to be looked at as abusers. They don't want to be looked at as these people, like, shame on them for doing what they've done to us, as survivors of abuse. And my God, you know what I mean? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous that we should be feeling any kind of shame for speaking out. Some people say, oh, how could you do that? How could you speak out against your family like that? It's like, I don't know how they can sleep at night, to be honest with you. I don't know how my abuser dad could sleep at night knowing what he did to his family. My mother's in the grave 16 years, so I mean, whatever. But the thing is like, if she was on the planet today, she'd probably have a death warrant out on me. I mean, the woman hated me. So, there you go. But the thing is why should I stay silent to protect people who hurt me? You know what I mean? And that has a lot to do with that whole inner shame and inner, I'm not good, look at me, I'm a bad person because I've come forward with the truth of what happened in my family, and to exonerate my brothers, first of all, to provide some type of justice for them and for myself, you know what I mean? And so it's if my other siblings want to just be in denial, that's their own issue, you know what I mean? But I don't have to feel bad about coming forward with my story. And I don't have to feel bad about raising my voice and saying, look what these people did to me, you know what I mean? Like, this is harsh reality for so many people out here, that they will remain silent because that critical, shaming voice will tell them, oh, you just deserved what you got. You weren't lovable, you weren't worthy, you deserved what you got. That's a disease, that's a sickness. We have every right to come forward and tell what happened to us. It just drives me absolutely nuts to think that people, including myself, would feel bad about coming forward and opening and being honest and saying, look, this is what happened to me. This was all wrong. You know what I mean? Like, this never, ever should have happened to me, and it never should happen to any child. It should never happen to you. It should never happen to any child. It should never happen to any person. Like, people should not be treating each other this way. That's the truth and the reality of it. And I think that's, really what a lot of what Robert Burdy's talking about, the whole spiritual aspect. It's like, this is a sick society that would say, oh no, you shut up and you sit in the corner, you little abused child, because you don't have a right to open your mouth, because you're not worthy, and you're evil, and you're bad, you're unlovable. And what society is doing by discouraging people from speaking up about the truth is exactly that, saying that, you stay in your little corner and you shut your mouth, put the tape back on. Put that duct tape back on your mouth, because you don't deserve to have You don't deserve to have justice. You don't deserve to have people know what happened to you. And so that's why I refused. When I started doing this, November 2009, after I started writing my blog, to really tell the truth of what happened to my family, I thought there's no way this will drive a wedge between me and my family. It will definitely drive a wedge between me and my siblings and my dad and my two siblings and the three of us that are left, and as well as a few of my nephews and nieces. I thought, but you know what? I don't care. If they don't love me enough to rally around me in this, then I don't need them in my life. Because, if they're not going to honor me and say, you know what, you are so right. You have every right to speak out against what happened. I mean, obviously my dad doesn't want that, because then people are going to know who he really is and who he truthfully is. You know what I mean? Nobody wants that. Oh, no. They want to be able to see him as an 88-year-old cute little old man, right? Not as the man who beat his children, raped his wife, beat his wife, and, completely annihilated us psychologically, emotionally, physically. My mother was just as bad, so there you go. But the thing is like, he walks around like he's some sort of saint, and he always has. And he creates a false perception. People think he's a saint. But really what he is, excuse me, he's a wounded little person who went on to wound his own family. And I mean, that's sad, but people do it, right? Cycle of abuse. So, we have to be okay with ourselves in this, so that we don't, because I feel like staying silent is another form of sabotage, if you ask me. Like not allowing ourselves to tell the truth and to get some help is just another form of self-sabotage. It's like saying, I'm not worthy. I'll just stay here in my dark little place and I'll just allow myself to suffer on without getting any help. And that way, I can just be that little person that I always was, which was not worth love, which was not worth, justice, which was not worth being cared about. I think that little person inside of me has always been pushing and pushing and pushing for somebody to love her, and forcing my parents. I mean, my parents never did love me, but that's just, my dad says it now, but, how could it be true? You know what I mean? I don't really listen to much that he has to say. He's a very sick old man. But the thing is, I was always pushing for their love as a child, and that little inner child person within me today is still doing the same thing, pushing the world to say, look at me, see me, you have to love me, and that's just from being so shoved, so rejected my whole life. Rejected by my parents, rejected by my siblings, rejected by society, rejected by other people. They find out you've been abused. It's like, oh, you're not worthy, you're not lovable. Look at you, you're an abused child. You were an abused child. How could you be lovable? That's what society says to abused children every time they close their eyes. Every time they don't speak out against child abuse, they're telling those children, you deserve what you got. Look at you, you're so unlovable. You're so unwanted. You're so dirty, or whatever they're saying. This is exactly the message that we're giving these children out here today by not opening up our mouths and not speaking out against abuse, against child abuse. This is sick and twisted and wrong. And I like what Robert Burney has said here, because he spells it out, the big picture, not just taking a look at the one side of it. I mean, he's taking a look at the whole entire thing of the fact that society is dysfunctional and codependent and spiritually sick. It obviously is. Otherwise, this stuff wouldn't be happening. But it's quite interesting, we have a right to raise our voices. We have a right to tell what happened to us as children. And even if we don't want to tell it like I'm doing in a public setting, to try to reach people, but, within our own lives, within our own worlds, we have the right. And I think it's just important to know that. Whether you choose to do so or not, it's your choice. But we have the right to do it, and we should not feel bad about it, right? I mean, this is ridiculous. It was not our shame. The shame and guilt does not belong to us. It belongs to the abusers, right? So that's the whole issue. Have a great day, everybody. I'll be back around. Tomorrow morning, same time, same place, 7 o'clock a.m. instead of 6 a.m. I'll be sleeping in this week. I'm off. So have a great day, everybody, and reach out. If you can't cope and you really are having a hard time coping and not doing well, make sure you reach out. If you have to call a crisis line, you call a crisis line. Anonymously. You don't even have to give your name. You can talk to somebody. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times we don't have people to talk to, and there won't be somebody around that we can just phone and get a hold of, right? So if you can't cope and you're just having a hard time, you know, you make sure you reach out, but you stick around and you make sure that you get some help and you know, allow yourself to heal and to have a good life, right? I mean, it's very important to stick around. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Gypsy Witch, for being here. I appreciate it, my dear friend from Australia. And you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you tonight. I'll be on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here tonight, as well as my own show later on tonight. So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.